Hi there guys, welcome to this video. Today we're going to talk about modern bodybuilding in general, the competitions, my opinion on it, and obviously I'm using, the case of Urs Kalecinski to illustrate, most of my points. We're not gonna talk much about the guy, but he's the good example of my non-understanding of modern bodybuilding and, everything around it basically. And when having a look at, the Olympia this year to try and see what was going on. This guy kind of like stood to me in a sense that he had a lot of hype, yet it's the hype that I don't really understand, and that it's not just about him, but like most of the people I've seen over the years within competitive bodybuilding. Each time I watch it, I don't really understand it. So to me, obviously modern bodybuilding and the way it looks today never really made sense. There are tons of like standards and judging, etc. But to me, the most important is, the first glance that you have of someone, how does he look and does he look good? And the issue today is that I don't see many bodybuilders that, to me, look good, because obviously this video is a subjective point of view. To me, the most important standard is just to look at someone and say, whoa, the guy looks good. The judges focus on like the hype there is around them rather than does the guy actually look good. When I watch the Olympia sometimes, obviously I just see guys that are like maybe in the 30 or 40 placing, and I'm just like, well, this guy just looks better than the guy that was at the 5th place. And the judging is hard to understand because you don't know if it's objective, subjective, or if it's about the hype or the pressure some judges could feel. I feel like this basically industry is almost not real. Like there is nothing rational that I can see. Like, first, obviously, the sport is based on like pure drug use, which is already, most people, I guess, who will touch the drugs, it comes from a pretty, irrational choice, in my opinion. Although we can, discuss this of the fact that people will say that it's a conscious thought. I always think, obviously, that in bodybuilding, the environment pushes a lot of people to take this stuff, and obviously the whole society is a bit ill, so it's easy to go and touch the stuff when you don't feel great about yourself, etc. So the whole sport is based on basically pretty much mental illness, in a sense. Like, people just don't feel great, and so they start taking the stuff.
I don't touch the stuff, not gonna touch the stuff, never touch the stuff. That was a lie.
So it's already a start from like an irrational base, and then it's like within the sport in itself, like nothing makes sense each time I watch, the Olympia. The judging and why sometimes some guys look super good and they're not even there, and some other guys look terrible and they're there. It just doesn't make sense. And because it doesn't make sense, I'm not really finding any explanation to you. So obviously this video is not a personal attack against, this guy like Urs. It's just obviously one of the guys which I thought, when you go through the YouTube fitness when it's the Olympia, if you usually browse, in fitness videos, you'll come across the Olympia and the trend like every year. And so this guy was very hyped, and I saw some of the pictures and I'm not impressed in a sense that when you take these drugs, the physique doesn't really look good. I think obviously this guy pushing natural could look good because I don't think his insertions are bad, and I think that's probably what's bringing him to this place. His insertions are made to be what the standards today judge a good classic physique, and so that's why he's there. But when I look at his physique, I just see kind of like drugs, like obviously I talked many times about this in my videos. For people who don't go to the gym, these people are on steroids could look like they work hard because they maybe go to the gym 6 times, 2 hours a week. But if you really implied in your life, in bodybuilding, you realize that at some point this is not much. And even more when you take drugs, this guy could push much further. But the industry is pretty low in standards, so there is never people bringing more competition for them to actually start working their ass off. And a lot of people rely on drugs because drugs do apparently more results, than the hard work. So today it's more competition of drugs and who can handle it better than the hard work. So when I look at the guy, I see just a skin that is very red and just not a pleasant physique to look at. And just this is enough for me, to not have these people, competing. Like, I don't think it makes it interesting to see them competing. Like, when I look at a physique and straight away I see drugs more than a good shape, it's just weird. And there's something funny, and it's just pure, it's not deep analysis that I'm making here, it's just, first glance type of thing that speaks louder, in my opinion, than starting to make deep analysis about things that don't make sense. Makes sense. When you look at old school bodybuilders, just simply looking at the pictures without trying to go deep into the things. Old school bodybuilders is like they manage to, like, if you tell someone this guy is natural and you don't know about bodybuilding much, you could believe they're natural because although the old school bodybuilders like Arnold, etc., are huge, it's like they still look good and you couldn't really see the drugs through their skin. So because they did take drugs, but like they did work much harder than what we see today and relied on drug less, which means if they had to rely on drugs less, they had to rely on more hard work. And when I look at Serge Nubret, for example, it's like, if you don't know much bodybuilding, you're like, whoa, like this guy could be natural because you don't see something weird on his body. You don't see that the guy is red or like has like a bad skin, well, Serge Nubret is black, but still, he looks full and good looking, great body. And Arnold Schwarzenegger or Luke Ferrigno, when they used to compete together, it's like the same, like the body looks great and you don't have this feel about like they're using drugs. So, but today, even someone who doesn't go to the gym, you show him someone with like super weird skin, you will be like, well, I don't know what's up, but there's something weird here. And that's really the difference between old school bodybuilders and today's bodybuilders, that you can see straight away that the guys are on drugs, looking at their physique. And this is what modern bodybuilding, when I watch it, inspires me. I just see drugs, and it's the same, obviously I wouldn't put, Chris Bumstead in the same field as this Urs guy. Also, the Urs guy is like just two placing behind him. But even Chris Bumstead, although I get the insertions and that obviously he has charisma and like he has good genetics, like in a sense that, not good genetics because he's putting on muscle. I talk about his body structure. It obviously looks good, like he looks like a bit like of a Superman, with the face going with it, the jawline, like, he's made to be an icon in bodybuilding. But I still think that it could look better. I don't know, if it takes more drugs or whatever than what they used to do in the days, but when I look at his physique, I see drugs still. Maybe a bit less than in other people, but I still, when I look at him, you feel there is something wrong, and that, the body is a bit rough, in terms of like skin, etc., which I didn't really get the vibe with like old school bodybuilders. So Chris Bumstead, in my opinion, if he managed to have this old school bodybuilding look, would look phenomenal, you know, if he was on drugs, but you couldn't really see the drugs through his body, like I'm describing with old school bodybuilders, the guy would look absolutely great. But I still, you know, despite it, you know, being a classic physique competition, which is supposed to remind us old school bodybuilders, none of them really look like the old school bodybuilders that we used to see. They all look like they have something going on in their body. And so, you know, I'm taking this example of the Urs guy because I find it crazy that, you know, that people are literally hyping and finding his physique incredible when I don't have this opinion, and I'm sure I'm not the only one. But I just don't really get it. I don't understand the hype about it when I see certain pictures of him. But it's just in general in bodybuilding, that's the vibe I get, not just from him, from many other people, but him particularly in this, you know, Olympia trend, because he's the one that I used to see all the time. I would, you know, connect on YouTube. That was the hype about this guy, and is he gonna beat Chris Bumstead, etc. And I'm like, where have we come up to, you know, in the bodybuilding industry? It's pretty crazy. I think the standards are just so low today that people who are new to the fitness industry and watching Olympia think that this is phenomenal, but I think they forget to look at the pictures of the guys back in the days. Maybe it's also the lighting, I don't know, or the tan. Like, it's like there are decisions to make, and it looks like the bodybuilding industry, modern bodybuilding industry, each time there is two options of making the right choice, they decide to make the wrong choice. And again, it's like first glance thing, like, you know, why the tan doesn't look good? Like, why do some people, like, literally they ruin their physique with like a tan that doesn't fit them? Like, I think that is, you know, I might be wrong, I haven't experienced it, but like, is it that hard to actually try out, you know, like a tan and actually find out what's good for you and what's gonna look good on stage? Because some people, like, they put tan and it hides all their muscle rather than actually showing it. And, you know, in this year's Olympia, that's the only thing I could tell in some of the even best placings, like, why the lighting is so bad. I mean, back in the days, you know, because it's not a technology thing, or maybe it is actually with a less good technology, we managed to have like a better lighting, like the muscle were showing more, like, you know. And I don't know why today they don't manage to have like a good lighting or a good tan for like the people, obviously the bodybuilders who choose their tan. Maybe they don't look as bad as they should, and maybe if you put them under the light of like old school bodybuilding stages in like, you know, from the 70s to like the 90s or 2000, then they would actually look better. But today I can't really see that because they have bad lighting and they have bad tanning. So maybe my critiques against, you know, these people not looking good might be partially because of this, but still I do believe that the physics don't look as good. Simply, there is much more vascularity and not good vascularity. Like, there's just you can see the drugs through the skin basically, and that's not a vibe that I could feel with the old school bodybuilders. You know, I don't say I have the answer. Like, this is my overall basically opinion on the thing. You know, I do think back in the days they obviously took less drugs and work harder. Although we still don't really have any answers. You know, some people could tell me, well, apparently Flex Wheeler wasn't the guy who worked the hardest in the gym, and look at his shape. I mean, maybe he wasn't the hardest working in the gym, but maybe he was still doing more than what we see today. I'm not sure. And maybe he was a very good responder to the drugs and had just incredible genetics to respond to this and be peeled the way he was. But objectively, I do think that the trend of people back then working harder, taking less drugs, is the reason why they had a better physique, and why today the guys rely more on drugs that they didn't used to take back then that make their physique look bad. You know, and there are a few exceptions of people who didn't work so hard apparently, and still look great in the 90s, etc. Like, you know, Flex Wheeler, or the other guy that was, I can't remember his name right now, but another black guy. He was phenomenally huge. I have his, you know, his face, but I can't really remember. Who was known to not work very hard, yet had an incredible physique. But, you know, objectively, I still think that this is an issue. That the real issue is that they used to work harder back then and rely less on the drugs, and today they rely more on the drugs and work less hard, which makes this big difference. And I obviously refuse to believe that back then they had better genetics than the guys today. Like, there is obviously no reason for this, so there is definitely a reason somewhere else. So I enjoyed, you know, giving my opinion. It's obviously one of the things that I like to make, like videos to get my opinion out there. So after all these years of natural bodybuilding, this is the kind of things that are pretty frustrating in the industry and that need to be talked about, in my opinion, or at least more. And obviously, if you watch this video, I encourage you not to set your standards to the hype of the modern bodybuilders that we see today, because I don't think they're a good example of what a great physique looks like. And even some people who might be less big in size and are natural, to my opinion, have a better look, because the natural look obviously doesn't have this look where you can see the drugs through the skin. And, you know, the longevity that comes with it is obviously much more important. And so don't get hyped up with the modern bodybuilders that you will only see for 2 or 3 years famous, and then they've taken so much shit that you won't see them anymore. And, you know, it's just temporary fame and temporary good looks, even though I don't think they're good looks, because I already described why. Focus rather on, you know, longevity. And if you still like, obviously, the bodybuilders who are big and very impressive, and that can only be attained through drugs, I encourage you to watch the old school bodybuilders, you know, from the 70s, like Serge Nubret, etc. Yes, they took stuff, but still, at least they had a great shape, and we can't take that of them. And they're more, in my opinion, of icons of bodybuilding, which can inspire you despite the drugs, rather than the guys we see today for like 2-3 years and that disappear. So thank you for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed this little rant, this little video about the Olympia and all the modern bodybuilding stuff and my opinion about it. Feel free to share your opinion. It's good to have conversation around this, and hopefully have discussions making the industry a little bit better by, you know, also giving arguments against what we don't like to see these days. So don't hesitate to comment and, you know, to ask questions. I will answer you, and hopefully I will see you soon in a new video. Take care of yourself. Bye bye.